I always feel like there needs to be like some sort of jingle here, like mail time.
Maybe I'll just copy and paste that into every episode.
No, that's okay. I'm sure everyone will agree. No, thank you.
Welcome back to another episode of Is Fitz Happy? I'm Luke.
And I'm Emma.
And tonight we are discussing chapter 23, The Wedding. So this intro blurb here is kind of discussing some of Shrewd's, the way he rules, basically. And it says that Verity kind of takes those to heart. And these later come into play at the end of this chapter in his warning to Regal through August. The art of diplomacy is the luck of knowing more of your rival's secrets than he knows of yours. Always deal from a position of power. And I'll bring up again a little bit at the end there what I kind of mean by that where it comes into play. But do you have anything else besides like that this might be referencing to, or do you think it's just that last message in the chapter? Or did you not really like read into this intro?
Well, what I got out of the intro was that Shrewd thinks power is kind of luck based. It's the luck of knowing more of your rival's secrets. Which I mean doesn't have to necessarily really mean luck, as in like, oh, just hope I find out. Like he has shade, and obviously he's gonna try to deploy any means necessary to get the tools he needs. But I don't know, I just found it interesting that he recognizes that some of it's up to chance, because sometimes just one stray word or phrase gains you more insight than you would have had, and then you can take down somebody with just barely anything. So I just thought it was really interesting. Yeah,
that is like, yeah, when you were saying like he believes in luck, I'm just like, but then you pretty much agreed with what I was thinking too, that the luck there is kind of a sarcastic phrase by Shrewd, because he puts so much effort into subterfuge and like spying and I don't know. Maybe
he thinks it's more of a luck that someone could outsmart him.
Maybe. That sounds like something. But yeah, it's a little look into Shrewd, because we don't get much of him, honestly, and how he rules besides like these outside glances from Fitz or how the public views him. So it's kind of interesting sometimes to get a little bit more close and personal to how he actually views things.
Right.
And then it picks up where we left off with Burrich and Fitz outside of the stable where Burrich found him, and they are hiding in, I think, the woods somewhere, just kind of camping out, waiting. Trying to think of a plan to proceed to save the day.
Right, and Fitz's idea is getting August.
He puts a lot of trust in him, like still.
Even though August is kind of a crap person at this point.
Right.
I mean, he's really turned like into a completely different person than who Fitz knew growing up. And I just find it interesting that he puts so much faith in August telling the truth 100% of the time and doing what's right. And that he doesn't question that, even though August continues to be a jerk and continues to make pretty terrible decisions, in my opinion.
It is kind of proven that Fitz is a pretty good judge of character for him, though. Like, he always delivers his messages, even if it's with a, backhanded, well, not even backhanded, just straight up like insults or whatever.
Right.
But I think like it might have sunk into his head that from Verity and from, Shade and stuff, that these people were trained to be tools, and August is a Kingsman. Like, he is a tool, even though he's on the Galen and Regal side. He's not like, he doesn't have a mind of his own, basically.
Right.
So I think Fitz is like, yeah, I think he's still loyal to the king.
He's neutral.
Yeah, he just looks down on Fitz because that's what he was taught to do.
Right.
So I think Fitz could, like, since this is important for the king to know, we can get him on our side, maybe.
Right. And I guess, I mean, Fitz is probably used to people being a jerk to him just because of who he is. So maybe it literally, like, doesn't offend him at all when, well, I'm sure it still offends him, but you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't outwardly offend him when people are a jerk to him for basically no reason.
Right, yeah, he can keep a straight face, at least. But during this, he is contemplating something pretty dark and something new for him as a 15-year-old that not a lot of young people contemplate or have to confront in their lifetime ever. And that's the potential of being crippled or hampered physically when previously you were hale and healthy all the time. It's kind of confronting your mortality. It was hard in the midst of all that life to wonder how much of this damage was permanent. Were the days and strength of my youth already spent, and nothing left to me but trembling and weakness? And yet with that in his mind, he's able to still that and push it out for now because of the training he's had and what's actually in front of him. I think it shows like a huge strength of will for Fitz.
Definitely. Well, he's always had a strong will. So but yeah, this definitely highlights it. And also the training that he's kind of had his whole life, because I think if the Six Duchies and Verity weren't in danger, he wouldn't be able to push it aside so easily.
Right.
Like, if this was just any other task, if this was even about like a bad person getting poisoned, I don't think he would have been able to set aside what he was going through. But I think because it's the Six Duchies as a whole, and also Verity, somebody who he loves and cares about strongly, he's like, okay, this can wait. Like, this will still be a problem whenever this problem gets finished. So let me focus on the one that's like gonna hurt more people than just me.
But he is impetuous, so I'm kind of surprised that like this didn't really cloud his judgment.
Right. Well,
in the immediate future. Right.
I guess I'm also a little surprised because it seems like he doesn't care much about the Six Duchies as a whole. But I guess, I mean, it kind of puts in perspective, like, lots of people suffering at the hand of Regal versus me. And sometimes if you look at the bigger picture, it's easier to, like, push aside problems.
Also, Fitz pushes aside all of his problems a lot.
That's true. So he doesn't like feeling his feelings.
That could be also another reason. So they're thinking of August, and Burrich's kind of just like bouncing that idea back, like, what, you want me to just walk up to him and bring him? I don't know, maybe we can get bribe a Cheerden to do it. They don't accept bribes. Okay. Well, you can just like bring him yourself, right? What, you want me to stick a knife into his back and say, walk with me? There's nothing we can really do. And he's also wondering, like, why do you think that August is innocent? And one of Fitz's reasonings is that the overheard conversation that he had at the end of last chapter, the skilling between Galen and Regal, August was not mentioned at all in those to kill or those to keep out or do anything. So he doesn't think he's involved. Fitz does not think that August is involved in any of those plots.
Right. Which, do you think that's a fair assessment?
I mean, it seemed like Regal and Galen thought that they were completely private and were just kind of airing out everything around that problem. So it's a logical conclusion to jump to, but the way that he fully dives and trusts that, I don't know if in his place, I would do that. Right.
Well, I think especially because it's followed up by him reasoning that August can't possibly be part of this because of the skill conversation is followed up by him talking about how he didn't think Regal could skill. In fact, he says Regal could not skill. There's not even a question. It's just Regal can't skill.
Right.
So how are they skilling? Maybe it was some other magic, and there's no thought of... I mean, he knows that people can be used as a tool to draw strength from, so why wouldn't he think of that at all in this moment? Of maybe he's going through
August was helping.
Yeah, like I feel like that would be my first thought, but also I'm not struggling from poison, so I don't know.
Yeah. True. But Burrich points out a really good thought here. If he's loyal to the king, meaning August, and has no suspicions of Regal, then he is loyal to Regal as well. And that's where Fitz is like, well, we'll force him to come here then, because Verity has to be warned about this. And Burrich's like, I'm not going to bring a knife onto the lead skill person here and bring him.
Do you think that if Burrich decided to do this crazy plan, August could defend himself in any real way with the skill?
No, because he's blocked off. I don't like Galen couldn't.
Fair. I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
Never mind. I mean, I was more so thinking like, does he have the ability to protect himself with skill as a weapon? Or can he only send and receive messages?
I mean, I thought they learned a bunch of things, but I guess it doesn't go through everything. And most of it was just like looking through other people's eyes and messages and stuff. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're capable of doing because Verity doesn't seem to think that they're very trained at all.
Right. He calls them parrots. So. But
like Will and Serene, I think, and maybe is Burl another one?
Maybe.
I don't know. I think they like attack people like Fitz with the skill at points, but I don't remember what those battles look like or if they're just like trying to suck his strength out to kill him.
Right.
So I think August could try to do that, but he would be blocked off.
Right. And also, would he jump to that if he didn't think Burrich was good? Although he does think that he is one of those people that can give his skill to others, because everybody thinks that about Burrich, which is true technically, but not right now or ever again.
And then the conversation leads to bribing someone to bring him. And Burrich's like, what would we use to bribe him? We have like nothing. And this is where the earring gets brought into play. Mm-hmm. And Burrich like jumps out of his skin almost. And he's like, where'd you get that? Because this is the earring that he gave to Chivalry. And he thought went to Chivalry's grave with him.
Yeah.
Fitz is silent, waiting after Burrich says she had no right. And he says, it was your father's. I gave it to him, he spoke quietly. Fitz asks, why? Because I wanted to, obviously. He closed the topic. Fitz is about to unfasten it, and he just says, no. Keep it where it is, but it is not a thing to be spent in a bribe. It means a lot to him.
Yeah.
And we see that more in the series as it goes on. Again, we covered it before when Fitz got the earring from Patience, but this was the earring that his grandmother bought for her freedom. It was the slave symbol that she had been freed, I believe. Passed down to him and then given to Chivalry as a sign of his loyalty.
Right.
And later on in the chapter, we see a little bit more, and I think that's next chapter, actually. Yeah, next chapter, we see a little bit more of that loyalty come through, and Fitz starting to understand it. But for now, it's just like a puzzle to Fitz.
Right, which most things are, so.
Jonqui shows up then, in the middle of this, while they're having these conversations, trying to plan out everything, and she is led along by a pup from Nosey's family somewhere, and one of Fitz's shirts. So obviously the tracking dogs are doing their job, and she found him.
Mm-hmm. And she is adamant that they need to come back and that they need to hurry.
Yeah, definitely. And one line I want to say here is that Burrich had risen and taken a defensive posture over me. Like, even though they have all their difficulties and difference of opinions, strong opinions in certain areas, Burrich still loves him, and this is a marked change from the just an hour previously of Burrich almost not helping Fitz out in the stables.
Right, yeah.
So when he sees that earring, he's like, all of a sudden is way more defensive and helpful. And I think it's either that, it could be, I mean, I could be reaching there, but it could be Burrich just making up his mind, helping Fitz out, and then seeing that action through because he loves Fitz.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to think that it's because, like, he loves Fitz, yes, and he was going to help him out, but also, like, he sees the symbol now. It's like, okay, I pledged myself to, like, the man who wears his earring, basically, so.
I don't know. I think that Fitz puts a lot into the earring's meaning. But I don't necessarily fully trust Fitz as a narrator. So
No, he's not reliable.
No, I don't necessarily put as much weight on the earring. I think there's definitely history there and a reaction from Burrich, and I think it helps strengthen his resolve for sure. I see it as more of a reminder of this is Chivalry's son, and I can't walk away from him.
Yeah.
And less of like the earring is what I'm bound to, because in my mind that feels too genie-ish. Like
just rub the little netting with the blue gem and Burrich will pop out.
You never had a friend like me, except super judgy version.
I was picturing Shazam with Shaq, actually.
Oh, okay.
Or is it Shazam? Oh man, it might be Kazam or something like that.
I feel like Shazam is a product or something. Like, no, isn't that a cleaning product?
Shazam was the superhero with the movie that came out, right?
Didn't we decide that this was like some Mandela effect thing?
I have no idea.
I don't know.
I have to look it up now. Okay. Shazam is 2019 action comedy movie with starring Zachary Levi, and Kazam was the 90s genie film starring Shaquille O'Neal.
Very important distinction.
Yes, very important. Anyway, Burrich is Kazam. That's what I was picturing.
Moral of the story. But anyway, so that's why, I don't know, I don't put as much weight on the earring itself. I think it's more of just a visual reminder that he can't give up on Fitz, even if even if it's just for loyalty of his father, which I don't think it fully is. I think it's more of like an excuse Burrich is giving himself to still be able to help and love Fitz, even though he doesn't agree with the wit.
That could definitely be true.
But I don't know. I mean, that's just how I read it, and that's the beauty of books.
Yeah. So Jean-Qui is here and saying that Ketchikan has forgiven you. I've counseled her a long time. Basically, Jean-Qui is the Chade of this kingdom. She's the spy master. I don't think she's like an actual assassin.
She could be.
She could be, definitely.
She does know
she knows a lot of herbs and poisons and stuff. But she for sure knows like all the information everywhere and is the advisor to the royal family 100%. So
right. Well, she's definitely very smart. So
and also a sibling to the king.
Uh-huh.
So little parallel there. But her little lines here when she's getting kind of angry leads me to that. It's, shall I take months and years to teach you all I know about balances? For a pull, a push, for a breath, a sigh? Do you think no one can feel how power slews and tilts just now? And that's just, it feels like Chade getting angry and like, you don't know anything about how these things work. I'm just pulling my strings.
These are very strenuous threads and we cannot let them break.
Right.
And she also, before that, is talking about how the reason that any of this is going on is because Ketchikan is using her kin right. She's invoking her kin right to forgive kin for injury to kin. And by our law, if kin forgive kin, no other can do otherwise. So she's talking about this process of which she had to have advised her to do. This is the best way to make sure Fitz survives, because now he's basically pardoned. And she also talks about how Regal tries to dissuade them, and even King Eoid, oh Lord.
Eod?
Yes.
Eod, yeah.
Even King Eod agreed, not because he does not mourn Rurisk, but because the strength and wisdom of Jeanpei law must be respected by all. So you must come back. And I think this is a very important thing of they're doing something to undermine Regal's plot, whether or not they fully know at this point Regal had a hand in it, which I'm sure they do. And they're doing that by strengthening their own power in the eyes of the Six Duchies people that are there by saying, our laws are above yours. At least while you're here.
Yeah, we're in the Mountain Kingdom. It's our law. It's
our law, and our law says we get to pardon whoever we want to pardon. And I just think it's a very important stance that had to have been thought up beforehand. Because if this was just Kettrican saying simply, I don't wish to pursue this, or I want an investigation done, then that doesn't really give her any power or standing.
Right.
And this props up the Mountain Kingdom in a way, and I just really respect that intelligence and thought behind the process.
Definitely, yeah. Leaves their agency there. She also says at the end, I do not know who I wish to win. Until I do, I will let no player be eliminated. That's just Jonqui herself, because she has not forgiven Fitz either. But everything's in place still. So Burrich is happy with that explanation, and they all journey back to the palace, where Fitz doesn't draw a lot of attention at all, because no one really knows. They're doing exactly... See, the last few chapters are interesting because everything's kind of out in the open, and Fitz or whoever else asks questions about what will happen if this happens, and then that thing happens.
Yeah.
So all of the answers that we got before are going through. Fitz asks Kettrican what would happen if, Rurisk dies. Would you still marry Verity? And she's like, yes, I would call for your death, but yes, I'd go through the wedding, I'm promised. That happens. She forgives him, but the same thing happens. And then they also said that we would cover up the death. Rurisk says that we wouldn't let the people know that I died by poison. And, all these other things, they're just kind of happening the way that the answers to the questions were laid out for us early. And I thought that was a really interesting device in the last few chapters here, because we literally have the answer of what's happening in the future, but we don't really know that until you read through it once.
Right. And it all happens exactly like they say. And it just shows how assassins or people in the throne can really think through all possibilities and try to avert disasters, and how much goes on behind the scene in this world with royalty to make sure that things continue to run smoothly, that the people will never know. And I don't know, I just find it really fascinating.
So they get back to Fitz's room where he was going to wait, but it is completely destroyed. Someone searched through it, and they found the little poison box that he had, the poison kit, and took that. So Fitz can no longer arm himself with anything. Do you think that was Severin's and Raud's last job?
I don't know.
Do you think when he went to the well, no, it had to happen in between Jonqui grabbing the shirt and her finding Fitz and them walking back, because she says that I only grabbed a shirt. I did not do this. And
we don't exactly know when.
They're dead already. Severance and Raud are dead.
Oh, they are?
Yeah, because someone mentions to him that they got into the poison and died. Although that could, I don't know.
It doesn't say when they get into it.
Yeah, was that August who says that?
It's Regal who says it in the baths later this chapter. It's a pity that they got into the your poison you left for me. So I guess technically they're probably dying right now.
Yeah.
So they could have been the ones that went and got it. Or Regal could have done it himself. True. He could have had August do it. He could have said, go look for the poison. We need to prove that he did it when we get back.
Personally, there's no evidence for it, but I don't think August did it. I don't really know why. I just don't think that Regal would involve him further.
Okay.
And 100% I don't think Regal did it himself. He wouldn't dirty himself to that level.
I don't know.
Later on, he says that he doesn't want to be too involved in the case to allay suspicions from him. So
he doesn't want to visually to other people seem too involved.
Right. And him going over there if anybody notices that.
Yeah, but I guess I don't know.
I just don't see Regal dirtying himself, stooping to that level.
Fair enough. I guess so. It would have to be them, right? Or the Chayurdan that gets
That's true.
Bribed later, or not bribed, whatever.
He was there. Yeah, he was there earlier.
The guy who's there.
Yeah.
So, who knows? Could have been anybody.
The Chayurdan who helps drag Fitz earlier, and yeah, who's there later. That's true. That's definitely true. So they get back, and Jean-Qui leaves. They kind of clean up a little bit. Burrich eats. They try to get some water in Fitz and try to get everything settled down. And they're kind of waiting for Jean-Qui to get back. But August comes in instead.
Mm-hmm.
And he has gotten messages from Verity through the skill. He literally says, I come at the bidding of King in Waiting Verity to speak his words for him. This is his message exactly. And he was going to recite a whole thing and then probably leave, but Fitz interrupts him, just asking after Verity and everything like that. And he says very specific words. This is another reason why I think that August is not involved, is because he literally does exactly what his leaders tell him to a T.
That's
and
fair.
Like he's fulfilling his role still. I don't know. But he says, he bids you draw strength from those around you loyal to you, for you will need it to face him. And it's pretty, I don't understand why August does not draw these conclusions for himself.
Right.
I don't know.
I mean, as far as August knows, Fitz is a poisoner trying to ruin things for Regal in the Six Duchies, so
yeah, but he was in the skill lessons with Fitz. He knows that Fitz has a rudimentary skill, and Verity's literally like, hey, draw strength from those loyal to you to face me.
But Galen says that Fitz has no skill and that he isn't talented, he's no aptitude for the skill. And if Galen is saying it, it must be true, because we're all in cult Galen drinking the Kool-Aid.
That's true. That's true.
So how could he possibly pull on strength from anybody if he doesn't have the skill to begin with?
Interesting. Yeah.
I know. He's in a cult.
He also says that Regal is calling for him, and then also has a message for Burrich. And it says, Burrich says, if your ignorance were not protecting you, August, I might dispel it. Yeah. Burrich stood looking dangerous. That's a pretty badass line.
Right.
Not gonna lie.
Well, I mean, before that, he's being all sassy.
True.
Talking about how tragic for Regal, an untrained valet. Like, he really just doesn't care right now. He was like, fight me about it, August.
August does mention here, by the way, and your cowardly poison, no doubt meant for Regal, has found poor Severance and Roud. So it was August. It must have been Severance and Roud who did this.
August. Yeah, I was wrong.
It must have been Severance and Roud. So if it just happened recently-ish, they must have done it and oh, you found the box, celebration, here's some wine, drink up.
Also, we don't know how long they were gone, because Fitz had to be maneuvered by two people.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it could have taken them hours.
Could have been, yeah.
Know.
So it must have been Severn's and Raud.
Yeah.
And they died recently. But yeah, after Burrich is all sassy and threatens August, basically saying if you weren't ignorant to the plot and everything that was going around, if Fitz hadn't vouched for you, basically,
yeah,
I would beat you to a pulp right now.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like he would give August a chance to like listen to I think he would say some more mean things that like unveil the truth.
That's true, yeah.
And give him a chance to be less of a jerk, but
he would dispel the ignorance about the plot if it wasn't saving your life.
But also maybe he's so angry because of how terrible August is being to Fitz. And I mean, to be fair to August, he does think Fitz murdered people, like multiple people. Well,
tried to kill his prince, did kill the king in waiting's soon-to-be brother-in-law, like
the two servants around, and
a lot of like a big attack on the royal family, basically. So yeah,
so like I get it, but also this might be one of the few times Burrich is privy to how Fitz is treated.
Yeah,
based off of him being a bastard, even if this is a little bit more exaggerated than normal because of the circumstances, but like, if you were a parent and your kid was being treated like this and you know your kid's innocent and hasn't done anything wrong, it would probably make you a little bristly. Like, I don't know.
Well, I don't know if Burrich thinks that Fitz has done nothing wrong.
That's fair. He knows.
In a couple areas.
Yeah.
But,
but I mean, for all intents and purposes.
So August has a message from Verity to Burrich as well. King in waiting Verity is not unaware of how you attempted to help the bastard escape, serving him as if he were your king instead of Verity. You will be judged. Did Verity say so? Burrich asked curiously. He did. He said you were once the best of king's men to chivalry, but apparently you had forgotten how to aid those who truly serve the king.
Recall it, he bids you, and assures you of his great wrath if you do not return to stand before him and receive what your deeds merit.
Basically saying, like, help him out, but come back to me, please, alive.
Yeah. Like, yeah, I'm going to be angry if you die in this.
Yeah. But yeah, it's referencing, again, that Burrich was literal king's man, as we learned earlier in the book. Another great device of writing, bring something up earlier, like the old words for drawing strength from someone were king's man, and that Burrich was that, and then remind it in the climax of the book that this is potential, we can possibly do this. And they try.
Well, first Burrich agrees to bring Fitz to Regal, and August says now, and Burrich is like, as soon as he's eaten, and August is not happy with that answer, but he leaves anyway. But as he leaves, it says, screens cannot be effectively slammed, but he tried. And I just imagine, when you have a sliding door and you try to like close it really fast and get stuck, and then you're like trying to push it forward and it's like still stuck, and you're like getting more and more mad, and then finally you get it closed and you're like, huh. That's the mental image I have.
Or one of those doors that, like, another mental image would be another one of those doors that slows itself before it closes, so it never slams. So you like try to swing it and it just kind of like stops and then slowly, gently drifts into the frame.
Yep. I just thought that was a very funny image, so I wanted to make sure we talked about it.
But yeah, so Burrich's like, well, I got that message. Did you? And they try. Fitz tries to draw strength from Burrich and reach out to Verity, but it doesn't work. One, because Fitz probably can't really skill right now, and two, because Burrich has walls around him, and no one can reach him, except Chivalry, because Chivalry would be able to find the word, or like would know the word to bring down his walls, but that cannot happen.
Right. I mean, it must have been a really special bond between the two of them, because he specifically says when talking about it to Fitz, I have strength, and there were some few times that he needed it, meaning chivalry, in worse circumstances, and I gave it willingly. So I have withstood this before. Try, boy. If we fail, we fail, but at least we will have tried. So many times in worse circumstances than what they're in, which feel pretty bad, he helped willingly give his strength to chivalry.
He was a true kingsman.
Yeah. And we know there has to be a very strong bond for this to work properly, too.
Yeah,
so
he even says it. Chivalry gave me to understand that for such a taking, it was not as important as the friendship between us. Meaning that he had no skill himself, but that wasn't as important as the bond that the two shared.
Yeah. What do you think the word is that closes? Do you think it's like...
I don't know. I don't even know if it's like an exact just single word either.
Well, I think it is.
Is it?
I'm pretty sure that's how it works. That's
like a phrase
how
or
it
a
works
word.
for shine later.
True. I don't know.
I know.
Some inside joke. Probably something really stupid.
Yeah. Oh. It just makes me wonder all the time. I'm like, I wonder if it's like really, really simple. Like if Fitz really tried, like once he found out and like
brute force and broke it down and I don't know.
But I guess he doesn't learn till it's too late that that's what happened. So
yeah. After they get the skill scrolls, after Burrich passes away.
Yeah. Sad stuff. Well, anyway.
But they try. It doesn't really work at all because I'm sure Fitz's walls are up too high. He's had another attempt on his life, and the last time that happened, he wasn't able to skill for a long time after there, either accidentally or on purpose.
Right.
His body's just in self-preservation mode, basically. And
I mean, even if he could open himself up, nothing's going to happen, which they don't know.
Right, they don't know. But, I mean, if he was able to open himself up, he wouldn't need the strength from Burrich to reach Verity.
True.
But yeah, that's unfortunately, he's blocked off, and he has too high of walls and wasn't trained enough to be able to let him drop. Yeah. But we get a little knowledge bomb after Fitz kind of jokes around. And says that he talks to the fool sometimes. The fool talks to him sometimes.
Burrich talks to the fool.
Yeah, after Fitz is joking around, Burrich drops the knowledge, which is interesting. Why do you think that happens? What do you think he talks to him about?
Well, probably little things to help nudge Fitz in the right direction, and keep Fitz safe.
Yeah, I think it's talking to Burrich just to get him, not directly about Fitz, but to, because the fool doesn't work like that, but I think the fool knows that he's important to the plots.
Yeah, like, hey, maybe that mare that Fitz is supposed to ride tomorrow is pretty sick and you should pick a different one, or like something like that, you know, like little things that are like, and also maybe he just talks about benign things that have no meaning to the trail of time and the circle that is life.
I somehow doubt that.
That's fair.
But I think he would just make little comments, one, to associate himself so he's comfortable around Burrich, because I think with the futures that the fool sees, he sees Burrich is with Fitz,
right,
and helping him. So I think he wants to lead him in that direction towards creating that bond
Fitz,
again.
Yeah, that's fair. And I mean, I don't know, maybe Burrich is scary to him, so he has to get used to him in some way. But also, if he helps Fitz, he knows Burrich can't be that bad. So
right,
and it seems like the fool only talks to people who either are important or are decent people. He seems to have a very good judge of character.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that helps when you can kind of see what actions surround them in the future.
Yeah, for real. Could properly judge people.
But Fitz makes an assumption that Regal wants him there and is summoning him there to bargain. There can be nothing else, and if he wants to bargain, we may be able to gain something. Burrich comes back with the wisdom of the ages here. You speak as if Regal follows the same rules of common sense as the rest of us. I've never known him to do that. and I've always hated court intrigue. I'd rather clean stalls.
Yeah. You never know how somebody measures things. Don't assume that they measure the wheat by the same bushels you do, or whatever the fool said.
That's where it like comes back in right here. Fitz is making this assumption, and that's the wrong one.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
Yeah, for real. Like, but Regal really doesn't follow any rules of common sense, and
no, he follows what his mother told him, and
right.
She was crazy.
Right, and you would think Fitz would get that by now, after almost dying twice already today. Right. But he's like, no, I think he's gonna bargain with us. It's very optimistic of you, Fitz.
So they head out towards the hot springs.
I also wonder, though, we know that Fitz as a catalyst has a lot of points in his life where he could die, and that life is kind of trying to kill him. Yeah. And like that's just how it is for a catalyst, I guess, or that's what it seems to be from my reading.
Well, for him specifically, not all catalysts, I don't think.
Right, because his life means more opportunity, and so a lot of things,
because he wasn't supposed to be alive.
Right. So I wonder if like part of him is drawn towards these events that kill him, or are supposed to kill him, like not on a conscious level, but like subconsciously he makes bad decisions when it comes to areas where he could be dying, because his path wants him to go there so badly to like fix the fact that he's even alive. Like the world is trying to fix the balance.
That's a really interesting thought.
But I mean, maybe not. Maybe he's just that dumb sometimes. But I feel like because he continuously goes into these situations where we previously see him make such smart decisions, and then he keeps going to these areas where he could potentially die, and he usually almost dies in almost all these situations. So I'm just wondering if that's part of fate, and that's why the fool is so scared, because it's really hard to get the path on the right path after so many years of the wrong path being dug in. So I don't know.
That's a really interesting thought, and it would be a cool like world thing that, you know, the universe is trying to stay in that rut, like how the fool describes it as like a wheel going down a path, and Fitz is the rock that sets it off out of the path and onto a different one. I hesitate to fully subscribe to that theory, because I feel like it takes some of the agency and trauma-based choices away from Fitz. He's gone through a lot in his life, and I feel like a lot of his decision-making is based on like his rash decisions to correct something, to try to fix something, and I don't know. So I feel like a mixture of the two would be acceptable, but like fully having the world like, hey, this kid just needs to die is a little bit too much and takes away too much agency for my feelings. I don't know.
That's fair. I don't know. I just see it as like the world wants to right the balances, even if it's been unbalanced for so long, because that's the new balance. And like, it's not necessarily that I think that it's taking agency away, because we know that everyone is on a path, and that anything can change that. You can easily change people's paths, but sometimes it's harder than others to change a path. And so I don't know. I just, in my head, it's like a residual of you shouldn't be here. And it's Fitz just having to constantly fight that destiny. So I don't know.
I mean, it makes a lot of sense, and it is kind of something that we know. I don't know if I'm putting more thoughts into what you're presenting, or like putting more on the world than what you're thinking, but it's an interesting like philosophical thing, like if he wasn't supposed to be alive, or how hard is like destiny trying to fix that, or whatever. I don't know. It's I'll be interested to get more into the rare conversations with the fool when he talks about the paths of the future.
Yeah.
and look back on this conversation?
We'll have to see.
Yeah, definitely. Because I definitely think like that is the case where, since he wasn't supposed to be alive, and it is hard to change some major futures. Some of them are almost completely set in stone, except for this one slim chance.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like Fitz makes the decisions himself to get into that slim opportunity. I don't know.
Right. Well, I don't know. I think he wills himself out of, and he always finds the slim possibility of living, regardless of what life is throwing at him. And I don't know. I think it makes him more powerful as a catalyst to be able to continuously be drawn towards these dreadful events and continue to come out.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
So they head towards the hot springs, the baths, and to Regal. We get a little mention that Nosy drooped along behind us as Burrich guided him. And outside of them, Chiarda stood and basically guarding the door. Fitz recognizes him as the torchbearer from the night before. So the guy who was leading them to the stables to drop Fitz's body, his bound body, after he got poisoned and after Rusk died.
Mm-hmm.
He was kind of stone-faced. He didn't show anything odd about Fitz's reappearance, almost as if he was expecting that.
Maybe.
And they enter. He steps aside, and Burrich and Fitz enter. And one thing I want to bring up here is, where's Nosy? Like, at the end of this chapter, we get him sinking into blackness in the water, and at the end of the next chapter, we get a mention that Nosy is the one who dragged him from that pool of water. But I don't see any mention of Nosy between he drooped along behind us, leaving Fitz's tent to the hot springs, and Nosy passing away after he dragged me out of the water. So did he follow them into the baths? And if so, like, couldn't he give any, notice, or there's no line of him barking or something? Did you see any mention of him anywhere? I'm just wondering if it's just like Robin Hobb ignored Nosy because he wasn't technically important and in that scene, and she didn't want to draw attention to the fact that he dragged Fitz out later to give more emotional impact.
Well, I'm not really sure.
Or was he waiting outside of the door, and when the Chiarda and Torchbearer followed them in, he kind of slipped in behind, or like left. He kind of slipped in behind. I
feel like if he was there when Burrich was getting attacked, he probably would have done something.
Yeah.
But I know before this, it says that he keeps like laying down to sleep.
Yeah, that's true.
Fitz wishes that he could escape his pains by sleeping while watching Nosy. So I wonder if he, like, because he's lived most of his life here, knows what the steams are, and so waits outside and just kind of goes to sleep while he waits, because I mean, I'm sure he like understands people go in there for a long time and then come out.
Right.
And so I wonder if it was more so he follows them, he sees they're going into the bathhouse and just kind of like lays down and waits. And then whenever he feels the connection with Fitz where he's dying, that's when he realizes something is wrong.
Yeah.
Because they don't have they're not bonded, and they don't have a strong bond. So when Fitz is being attacked and really angry, he wouldn't necessarily know, but whenever Fitz is flinging himself out really wide, it makes more sense that he would like realize Fitz is in trouble. So
it's kind of what I was thinking too, but it doesn't really say anything, so it's a good thought and good reasoning too behind it.
Yeah.
I just kind of figured that Robin Hood kind of left him out just for more impact.
Yeah,
later.
Which also could be the case. Maybe I'm just.
Well, it's a great in-canon reason for that happening. So
You're welcome, Robin. I did this for you.
That's actually what happened in my head now. So great.
I do just want to say before we get to what happens in the steam rooms, Fitz says something really interesting. He says, "Neither my breath nor the beating of my heart was predictable. I longed to be still, where I could listen to my own body and decide what had been done to it. And with this wording, do you think that is some form of wit or skill of going inside himself and knowing what's wrong? Or do you think that's just me looking too far into this?
I didn't really look into it that far. I thought it was just kind of like a figure of speech, and he knows anatomy very well from Jade.
Right.
And knows effects of poisons and herbs and things like that. And I think that everything has happened so fast that he doesn't know if he's going to be strong again. He had that wondering, like, am I going to be crippled for life at the beginning of this chapter? And I think it's just a little reflection based on that again, of like, I need to be alone for a while still to see what I'm capable of, if I can still do things. That's what I got out of it.
Interesting. Okay. Well, they go in.
And Regal is just pleasantly taking a nice little bath before the wedding, you know.
Again, bathing when Fitz comes to find him.
Right. And he's the only one in there. They are alone. And he kind of just explains that, yeah, you know, Kettrikin, you know, forgave you with the kin laws, but she doesn't realize that you're actually not really kin because you had illegitimate birth, so it shouldn't count.
Right. He specifically says she fails to understand you were not born of a lawful union and hence have no kin rights at all. Excuse me, sir. Why does your brother get any rights to be your family or help you in any way? He is also unlawfully born. So that just doesn't matter.
That's why Regal is stepping into being king and Galen is just helping.
Right. But still, like...
But Galen is more regal than Fitz ever would be too, because
it's his mother's blood.
Because it's his mother's blood.
I hate it. It just makes me so angry. Like Fitz has no kin rights, but Galen does. Okay,
Emma, you gotta stop looking for logic in Regal's speeches here. His monologues are beautiful. Just don't look for logic.
He doesn't use common sense like the rest of us.
But he asks a couple times to send Burrich away. Like, won't you send Burrich away? Won't you, like, leave him alone or whatever? Like, send him out of here.
Do you think he would have hurt Burrich either way? And this was just him messing with Fitz? Or do you think he was, like, kind of open to the opportunity of having Burrich take care of the horses, but...
Galen said, like, leave him alone. I'll kill him when I get back. In fact, I'll take pleasure in that. So I think he was, if he actually got sent away...
Right.
Then
he gets to live until
he gets to live until
a couple more days.
Yeah.
Ooh.
But also the Cheerden could have just been waiting for him to turn around and leave, and then all of a sudden, bonk.
Literally my thoughts.
So the Cheerden has followed them in there, and he clubs Burrich over the head because Fitz does not want to send Burrich away. Mm-hmm. And all of the noise and the steam and Fitz, you know, being poisoned and everything cannot detect him.
Mm-hmm. Burrich can't either? Question mark?
I know. I don't know.
Very odd.
He does have very strong walls in that and has been blocking himself out from the wit consciously for
years.
Decades. So I think that it's just like an unconscious reflex at this point to not use it.
That's fair. And also it kind of seems like Burrich is too trusting. Especially throughout this chapter. He seems to trust a lot of people. He lets his guard down pretty easily. As soon as he feels like he can understand where they're coming from, he just is like, okay.
I mean, also because Regal is taking a bath in a very, you know, vulnerable position. And Burrich is, you know, a tall, strong man who doesn't let no gimp leg bother him.
True.
You know? But he's supporting Fitz, and if he wasn't, he'd be able to avoid the blow, but instead, he gets hit incredibly hard. And it is actually a miracle that he lives through that later.
Yep.
The Cheerden just kind of says, yeah, he's dead after Regal asks and then leaves.
Yeah. He just touches him with his foot and is like, looks dead to me. I'm sorry, are you not gonna check it? I mean, I'm glad that that's all he did because I don't want Burrich to die, but like, also, Regal's not like wanting to triple check that somebody's dead. I don't know, it doesn't make sense. Well, okay, first of all, I don't think the Chayurdan actually cared whether or not Rurisk was dead. That was more of a paid off thing. I think that's just what Regal said, because when Regal says that he loved his prince very much or whatever, right before that, John Quee tells us that they've kept it a secret and that nobody knows that he's dead. And they don't announce that he's dead until the wedding, when Kettricken says...
would say that.
Well, sure, Regal could say that, but he could say a lot of things that aren't true. And I feel like that was just a thing that he's saying to, like...
But, I mean, also, like, Fitz and Burrich both have knowledge that the mountain people can't be bought. So I don't think he was, like, bribed.
They can't be bought. It's not like for sure. They hadn't tried.
I take that at pretty much face value.
But also, like, Fitz is pretty young and not very influential. If the could-be-soon prince of a foreign country is asking for your help, and offering you a substantial reward, like, I don't know. But also, if you do think that he isn't paid off and he really just cares about Rurisk that much that he isn't going to tell anybody else that Rurisk was poisoned afterwards to, like, cause a fuss and, like, also go after Fitz when he realizes Fitz is still alive, then...
Regal didn't have him killed.
That's true. But I'm just saying, like, if you believe that it is just about his prince, like... Also, Burrich pretty obviously was alive, and he didn't do a very thorough check to see, and didn't say anything when he wasn't dead. You know, like, he just, I don't know. And also, all Regal had to do is say that Burrich helped. This guy doesn't know. And if he's going to believe just anything Regal says at face value, Regal could say anything about Burrich, and then, of course, Burrich would be a traitor. So, Regal, when finding out supposedly Burrich's dead with no second checking or even a thorough check the first time, is briefly pleased.
The Chayurdan got his revenge, and he's outie.
I guess. Which, do you think that's why he doesn't carefully check? Because his beef isn't with Burrich. Like, he doesn't want to...
Yeah, he doesn't care.
He doesn't care if this guy's dead. It's all about the other one.
And Burrich is just an obstacle to Fitz dying, basically.
Yeah.
So.
Ooh. But Regal dismisses him because he has to big boy talk now with Fitz, and he can't let anybody else hear that.
He has to monologue.
Yeah.
They almost caught me monologuing. But, Fitz's first thought after this is, a cold purpose rose and set in me. I could not hope to live now, but it did not seem important. Warning Verity did, and avenging Burrich. His first thought is still... warning Verity.
Right.
Warning the king even. Like, when he skills out later, he first tries the king.
Yeah.
It's not for his own life, really, because he's like, oh, that's given up.
He's just ready to admit, like, I guess I'm dead now, so what can I do with the last few minutes of my life? That's
must
insane.
Still have, like, feelings left over from the Galen compulsion, basically. I know Verity got rid of it, the hazing and everything, but there has to be some leftover lasting effects from kill yourself, basically.
Right. Well, I think the hazing that was done to him just magnified the voice in his head. It wasn't necessarily not there to begin with.
It just allowed him to fill in all the memories that he was inadequate.
And he did that mostly with the fact that he isn't born to, like, in wedlock. So I'm sure the feelings of his life being worthless came from a very real place to begin with, and that just was amplified, and that even though it's gone, the magical reason that he is feeling it so strongly is gone, he's still struggling with that. And especially knowing that his king basically gave him up to be murdered here, knowing full well that there was a good chance that he wouldn't come back.
And that allows Fitz to be like, okay, I'm dead. I'll help Verity at least.
And in his what he thinks are his dying moments, he takes Chade's counsel.
Yeah.
And decides that Chade would advise him to keep Regal talking. Get him, buy yourself more time and see what you can do with that. Maybe something will happen.
More time creates more opportunities. Someone could come in. Someone could get worried that Regal wasn't there on time and check the baths. Like anything. And he tries to talk, but Regal kind of cuts him off and just continues on this monologue, basically, like we said. The princess did not forgive Burrich, only you. What I have done to him is well within my rights. He is a traitor. He must pay. And the man disposing of him was most fond of his prince, Burrich. He has no objections to any of this. And the Chiirda kind of, like, doesn't say anything back to that. He just leaves. And then Regal continues on with his monologue here and asks Fitz, aren't you going to call for help? He asked brightly.
He's a villain.
I'm gonna kill him.
I hate him. But, like, again, the beauty of the drama.
Yeah.
I respect it. Don't like it. I respect the art. I hate the player, not the game.
And he kind of lays out his whole plan that, oh yeah, so sad. You slipped and drowned in the pool when you tried to go to the baths by yourself. I had left earlier, of course, and I'm going to reprimand August for not bringing you directly to me. And Fitz is like, how many bodies are you going to leave in your wake? People are going to notice. And he's like, there are people of no consequence, so I don't care. Which, like, really goes to show the family resemblance there. Galen has that reputation, too, of not caring about people less than him.
So does Shrewd.
I mean, a little bit, but he still cares of the opinions of the people.
Yeah, but this is, like, the more callous version of Shrewd.
That's true.
This is Shrewd if Shrewd, like, didn't care if he had a bad reputation, which he kind of doesn't most of the time.
Or didn't care about the kingdom at all.
Yeah, only cared about himself. He also thinks that it doesn't matter who dies if they're of little enough consequence, and if they're not, then we'll just make them of little enough consequences. Everyone's a chess piece. And Regal takes that to an extreme. It's definitely running in the family, which is interesting because it doesn't seem like Chivalry or Verity feel that way about people. But in this, I see Regal as Shrewd's son.
Yeah. That's fair. I see him more as his mother's son in this moment, with some smatterings of Shrewd that you brought up there, but because I don't see Shrewd having like a ton of influence over how Regal became a person.
Yeah, well,
he's very diplomatic and manipulative and tactful, and that he got from Shrewd 100%, but manipulative also from his mother.
Right.
But I still think, like, deep down, Shrewd really does care about the kingdom and the people in it.
Right.
Like, everything he's doing is for the well-being of the kingdom.
Right.
So I just don't see that attitude fully.
I don't know.
Going over.
I mean, yeah, I think it's a more extreme version, like I said. But I still think it stems from how he's seen Shrewd interact with people. And especially, Regal doesn't seem like the smartest person. Like, he's not the brightest bulb in the box. And I mean, he's smarter than I think I like to give him credit for, but I think he doesn't have though. No. And I don't think he has the people skills to understand the reasoning behind his father's motives of moving people like chess pieces. Yeah. I think he watched his father his whole life use people as chess pieces and took that to mean people are tools. Insignificant.
Yeah.
I'm royalty.
That's fair.
They're my tools. Because he's not thinking about the bigger picture. He's not thinking of the game board. He's only thinking about the pieces that are being discarded.
Yeah.
And so I think in that way, it's definitely something he picked up from Shrewd, but he doesn't have the emotional depth to be able to use it a little bit nicer, I guess.
Yeah, that's a really good thought. I like that analysis. But also, yeah, Regal is smart and he can make ruthless decisions and come up with good plans, but also Galen is like the head of this plot.
Yep.
Then the Pale Lady is the head of like the rest of it.
Mm-hmm.
So Regal is operating within his own little thing, like, I'm the most important person and I'm using these other people, but they're the ones like directing his actions.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know. I feel like he could be a good leader. He could be an interesting person.
If he was the opposite of everything he is.
Yeah, he was a little less evil. Yeah, but I mean, like, sometimes ruthlessness is needed in leadership.
100%.
Sometimes you have to make the call that doesn't make everybody happy because it's for the greater good. And if he was doing things for the greater good, perfect. But to be honest, killing Burrich, not a bad idea. Horrible. Burrich is a great person and definitely could be useful alive. But also making that call isn't necessarily a bad one in the grand scheme. And in that way, I think he's a good leader. But also, did he think of that idea himself? Maybe not. Is he smart? He thinks he's so smart and the smartest person ever, so much so that he doesn't realize that other people are in charge of him. But I don't know. I think his personality does lend him to be a little bit more gullible in that all you have to do is really like flatter him and make him think it's his idea.
That's exactly what I was thinking too. Yeah, just butter him up a little bit and he'll go along with whatever you suggest, presenting it as his idea, basically. Like
you said, Fitz is awful. And I mean, wouldn't it be nice if he was gone in this way? Yeah. But of course, I mean.
Yep. But Regal is just kind of gloating. And I love this line right here that he says, and to your second, well, the same. How much fuss do you think anyone will raise over a dead stableman? You are so obsessed with your plebeian self-importance that you extend it to your servants. I think it's a great villain line. But Fitz is dumped on top of Burrich's body, and Burrich is living, and Fitz realizes that. And Fitz kind of shifts his mindset. He's like, yeah, I need to warn Verity, but like I want to save Burrich as well. Yeah. If I survive, Burrich might have a chance also. And then he says the maxim that he lives by, that his mother taught him. Ruthlessness creates its own rules. People are intimidated by a man who acts with no apparent regard for consequences. And that's literally Fool's quote that you brought up before. That's like, no one else really lives by this except Regal. So you can't really measure anything that he's going to do by assumptions that you've learned in the past. Because Regal will just make up his own action and take that path.
He lives by his own set of rules.
Yeah.
Which seems to be working out pretty decently for him.
Yeah,
so
far.
I guess.
Yeah.
But that is something that his mother taught him. And so I wonder, is Regal such a puppet because that's what his mother trained him to become? And without Regal even noticing, because I don't think she planned on dying when she did.
Oh, no.
So do you think she trained him to be a puppet so she could be the ruler whenever he took over?
Yes, 100%. She's pretty much a figure of worship to Regal and Galen. Mm-hmm. Like, he wanted to kill Lady Time so bad because Lady Time, he was convinced that Lady Time killed his mother, and like,
yeah.
But also,
why is Galen not incapable without his mother? How is he smart enough to, and still willing to bring Regal up to king?
I don't think that she had as much of a direct influence on him after Regal was born, because she would have like I have a actual legitimate son now, and would have stopped kind of direct him, so he had opportunity to grow and learn more of his own. And also the skill training, the way that Felicity would do it would, help you think critically with like the stone game.
True.
So I think like he got a little bit more training in being able to critically think than Regal did.
That's fair. And he just is blindly loyal because family, and probably much like he abuses people, he was abused into.
He still grew up into that family.
Yes. Yeah. Fair enough.
And Regal's basically saying, like, your death will be eclipsed by, other things. No one's really going to notice that you're dead.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Which also is interesting. It's interesting that he, like, is getting on Fitz about how you're so self-obsessed with your plebeian life, you little pleb. What is that not what he's doing? Like, he just can't realize that he's also
it's ironic,
blinded.
Sure. Like,
like, you don't think you're thinking a little bit too much of yourself, that your brother isn't gonna know? Well, I guess he thinks his brother's gonna die.
Yeah.
And I guess Shrewd hasn't necessarily given Fitz a positive, like, really, maybe he isn't thinking too much of himself. I don't know. I've changed my mind. So Fitz is fighting for his life at this point.
Yep.
He is fighting Regal, and Regal is undressing him very methodically while he's giving this speech. He's even folding the clothes that Fitz is wearing, which I wanted to point out because I was shocked he knew how.
Well, he has no valet right now. He needs to get used to that.
Right. But I didn't know he would even know how to fold a shirt nicely, because it doesn't say it was a sloppy fold. It says he nicely folded my shirt. So, like, I don't know. I think that's like an interesting skill that he has.
Congratulations, Regal. You can do some basic things too. Basic
chores. But then it does say that he's out of breath just trying to get the shirt off of Fitz.
Fitz is fighting him the whole time, and even with Fitz, like, tired and stuff, you'd be exhausted trying to, like, remove something or, like, take something away from someone who's fighting you. So True. I don't know. And Regal is not very active.
True, but it does say that Fitz is surprised with how.
I think that also comes down to Regal literally has, 10 years on him and is in the prime of his life, versus Fitz just kind of getting through puberty and not into, like, full-on strength training. And also, he is poisoned and, like, almost dead.
True.
But Regal, he folds those clothes to make it look like Fitz would have accidentally slipped and drowned himself, to give him that alibi. And he goes through his whole paragraph of, like, minimal alibis will work. I don't want to make myself look like I'm denying that whole thing too hard, but also, like, I want to have that alibi of I wasn't here.
Right. So. Which, honestly, pretty decent reasoning. Like, if I don't put too much effort in trying to look guiltless, nobody's going to think too hard about it.
Yep.
Because if I'm not that worried, why would I be guilty?
Right.
Which also, is he a sociopath? Maybe.
Yeah.
Doesn't really care he's killing somebody. Multiple people.
Quite possibly a sociopath. We are not psychiatrists in any way.
Right. And I would never diagnose a real person in real life. But seeing as this Regal is a book character and a villain who's literally murdering people.
Sociopath?
I feel pretty safe.
Strong possibility. So he goes through that whole thing and just shoves Fitz in.
Yeah. And Fitz is, like, really clutching at his throat. Probably not well, because we know he can't use his hands very well yet.
Yeah.
But, oh boy, do I wish he could have at least left a mark. Goodbye, bastard, he said calmly. Pardon my haste, but you've quite delayed me, and I must rush to dress myself, or I shall be late for the wedding. And he tumbled me in.
And Fitz is struggling. He can't really work his arms and legs. The hot water is loosening his muscles that were already, loose and not working. So he really can't do much at the moment. He's crying for Burrich, even though he knows Burrich can't help him. And he lets go. He says, my strength was flowing out of me, lassitude flowing in. So warm, so deep. Drowned like a puppy, I thought to myself, as I felt the darkness closing. Boy? Someone queried, but all was black.
And what he's been doing up until this point is bouncing off the ground of this deep pit.
Taller than him.
It's supposed to be
deeper than he is tall.
Shoulder height on a tall Chirudan man. I cannot say that word for the life of me. Which I assume is like 6'4" in my mind. And Fitz is a teenage boy who hasn't quite grown fully yet. Or maybe he has. They're short in the
and doesn't have
Dutchies.
Chivalry's height, right?
Right.
Yes.
At least at this point.
Yeah.
So I imagine him being like 5'6" at this point. And like he's really struggling. He's hitting the walls. He's jumping up, taking big breaths and going back down. And he can't even find the floor anymore. He's just, well, this is it. At least it's warm.
And the phrase drowned like a puppy, I think, is what calls Nosy to attention. Because that's who queries boy
right
in his mind. He's kind of flinging himself outward. He has those panic thoughts and associating himself with the memories of being puppies together and children together. I think that gets through to Nosy, and that's what brings
that
it in.
feeling.
Yep.
It's really interesting how this is written, because drowning is like a really scary thing, and it's really stressful. I was a lifeguard at one point in life, so I had to learn a lot about drowning. And your body basically goes into survival mode for about 30 seconds. When you thrash and you thrash, and after that, and you've wasted all your energy, your body, and you can no longer breathe, your body instinctively sucks in water. You cannot. Your brain can't stop you from doing it anymore, because your brain is just saying breathe, breathe, breathe. So at this point, he probably is sucking in water. I mean, if this is anywhere like real life when you're drowning. And yeah, it's not fun. You don't have a very long amount of time between when you start breathing in water and when you're brain dead. It's a very short amount of time.
Yeah, I think this whole thing, he's in that 30 seconds of struggling still. He takes a couple deep breaths, but since Regal kicked him in the side earlier, his ribs are probably rebroken. He can't really take a deep breath. Mm-hmm.
And you do freak out. And I mean, when I say the 30 seconds of freaking out, that's after you've run out of air. You you don't have anything left in reserve. Your brain is thinking, I need to breathe. Before you automatically breathe, you have 30 seconds of fight. And then you have automatic breathing.
That's what I think that he's going through right here, because right near the end of that, strength was going from me. Somewhere I was drowning. My body was failing, my thread to it tenuous. One last chance.
Yeah.
And he skills out. He first tries shrewd, like I said. But my king was intent upon other things. He was closed and walled to me, no matter how I stormed around him. No help there. And his one last chance is Verity. Mm-hmm. So he tries and reaches towards Verity.
This section is really interesting to me.
It is,
the way it's worded. I found him, flailed at him, but could find no purchase, no grip. He was elsewhere, open to someone else, closed to me. Verity, I wailed, drowning in despair. And suddenly it was as if strong hands gripped mine, and I scrabbled up a slippery cliff, gripped and held tight, and drew me in where I would have slipped away. So there's this imagery of drowning, even in this reach for Verity, until he feels a strong hand grip his and himself scrabbling up a slippery cliff. Mm-hmm. Do you think that this is when Nosy pulled him off? Or pulled him out?
That could definitely be true. Yeah, it could have happened at the same time.
Because we know that Nosy grabs him by the hand to pull him up. And he could still be so into skilling
that he doesn't notice. Because his mind has fled his body, basically. Mm-hmm. And it makes sense that it happens now because, if he does, is he alive? If he does suck in water, he would be brain dead.
Yeah, right? After 30 seconds, you're every second after the first 30 seconds is like years off of your life brain dead wise. Like you just it damages your brain significantly after that. That's
a great connection there, and it probably is, because it's the I mean, it probably happens at the same exact time, because Verity kind of reaches out in the skill river and sees him scrabbling against his walls, because Verity is occupied with Galen and August.
Right.
And
which also, how impressive that he has 3 people in his mind and is able to...
August wouldn't be in his mind. He'd be reaching to August.
But
still, connections, like 3
connections at the same time. That just seems really intense and like... Yeah, I don't know, insane to me.
And one of the things I do want to bring up before we get into his conversations with Verity is that Fitz feels like this is literally the end. I am dead here. This is my only chance. I have to do it. Nothing left to protect, so drop the walls and see if there is one last service you can render your king. No use fighting to stay alive inside my body. So subconsciously, he realizes that he's fighting every second of the day that he is awake and like walking in the world to keep his walls up. And when he's dying, he finally realizes that, and is just like, okay, no reason to protect anything because I'm going to die, so might as well.
There's nothing here left to protect.
Yeah. And Verity latches onto him, sees him.
Yeah. And he mistakes him for chivalry. And then realizes it can't be chivalry.
Yeah. It's the boy, Fitz.
And Galen comes in and tries to tell him he's imagining things. There's no one there. Attend to what we do now. Galen, calm and insidious as poison as he pushed me aside. I could not withstand him. He was too strong. Fitz? Verity? Unsure now as I grew weaker.
I do want to say right here that Galen was too strong for Fitz, which makes sense later in this couple paragraphs here, like maybe like the next line where he grows a lot stronger. Something gives way and he gets a lot stronger. I don't know how the skill works and what happened to Fitz, but obviously something is blocking him, and even though he's able to skill, his walls are still protecting him, even though he thinks he's, opened up himself. I don't know.
Yeah, well, because Galen's there, and Galen's scary, and so I'm sure on some subconscious level he's clamming up.
Right, yeah.
And I think, you would. He's trying to kill you. He has tried to kill you in the past.
He has PTSD.
Yeah. But I also was wondering if this was a little bit of Galen skilling at Verity that Fitz wasn't there. Like, nothing to see here, Jedi mind trick.
It could be, yeah. Because Verity asks again, Fitz? Unsure now as I grew weaker. So it could be.
Because we know Galen isn't as good as Verity and Chivalry at putting ideas in people's head, that he's not as strong. But if he's feeding off of the skill,
he did have more Solicity training as well, so he could be more subtle.
True. But also Verity could fight him maybe on some level, so maybe that's why he's still kind of like, well, maybe he's there. But this is the interesting part to me, right? So from I knew not where I found strength. Something gave way before me and I was strong. I clung to Verity like a hawk on his wrist. I was there with him. I saw with Verity's eyes. Seeing through other people's eyes is typically how he describes going into an animal.
That's true.
So I wonder if this is a mixing of his wit with the skill. Maybe his strength is coming from Nosy. Nosy is lending some type of strength, and he is feeding off of that to help him. And that's why we have this animalistic gripping like a hawk and looking through his eyes. And I know that there's definitely skill being used here, but we also know that he uses his wit and skill in a way that nobody else really does. Yeah. And so I wonder if he's tapping into that part of the human that is wit and using that to get his stronghold and doing things in his own way.
It does say at the end of next chapter that I believe he gave his life freely, recalling that we had been good to one another when we were puppies. So that kind of lends credence, and he was found with his head on Fitz's chest.
Nosy was
found with his head on Fitz's chest. So, I mean, it lends a little bit of credence that he was alive afterwards and was just having that physical connection with Fitz. Mm-hmm. So he could have been doing that 100%.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense. But I mean, looking through other people's eyes, just as a counterpoint, is a typical thing that skill users do, and it was specifically taught.
I always thought that skill users don't look through the eyes necessarily. They it's like a projection of the spirit or something. I don't know how to explain. Like, you know how out of body experience? Yeah. That kind of feel is what I mean, I
can do that, but it's what Verity does to Fitz later on, right, is riding in his mind.
That's true.
And also what he's literally doing with August right now, because Fitz then later describes looking through August's eyes at the thing. So I think he's occupying that mind. I love the wit connection there though, and I think that
maybe that's part of where it blends, like, because we know that they're related, so maybe that's part of the blending, and like how he,
like I personally think too that they like have a huge overlap and they blend. Right. But I thought when it's described in the books that the Circle of Magic wit and skill are on the opposite sides. That's what I thought, but I could be wrong. I always pictured it as like little magics in between the two, separating both sides. But like,
I don't know. I see them as closer together. I guess.
Me too. Personally, yeah. I just was trying to remember exactly.
Yeah, I guess I know at some point it's talked about, but I don't know.
But that's a great thought. I actually really like that.
It's just that, like, for a while in this beginning part, there's a lot of animal-like imagery, and throughout the whole thing, I guess this whole situation, there's a lot of animal imagery when it comes to Fitz, specifically in his interactions with Verity. And so I just wondered if that was on purpose to show that some of the strength is coming not fully from skill, because he's a super strong wit talent. Like, he's just crazy strong in it. So,
and that's where his actual strength comes from.
And maybe that's what he needs to draw on to be good at skill. I don't know. But yeah, so he's looking through Verity's eyes. He sees there are a few people there to witness Verity witnessing his bride's pledge. Which is kind of a weird thing. Like, what do you do while he's just sitting there in a chair?
Just sitting there watching.
Just clap whenever he looks like he's coming to. But yeah, so he sees everyone around, and then he sees Galen, who's supposed to be offering his strength as a Kingsman, was poised beside and slightly behind Verity, waiting to drain him dry. And Shrewd, in crown and robe upon his throne, was all unknowing, his skill burned and dulled away years ago by misuse, and him too proud to admit it.
Yeah, and that's looking through Verity's eyes, probably with like his knowledge of the people.
So, did August reach out to the king? Is that why the king was angry? Because he couldn't keep the connection for very long and didn't want to admit a weakness?
I think he still reached out to the king, but I think Shrewd doesn't want to spend, like he swats people aside, and I'm sure that's why Fitz couldn't reach him, because one, his skill at the time when Fitz was reaching out, he wasn't using his reserves of strength. He didn't have the strength from Nosy potentially, so he couldn't reach Shrewd. But if someone with that connection to him could reach him, he wouldn't want to keep that connection very long, because that would admit that
you would see into him his weakness, and part of diplomacy is knowing the weaknesses of others
and holding those secrets.
So that's, I don't know, I just found that really interesting that he's actually not very skilled.
Which brings into mind, like, what was the misuse? Like, what was his misuse to burn away or dull the skill in him? Did he just not use it for decades until it was like needed, and then he found like he was out of practice. I don't think that's the case.
We don't know enough about it, because the more you use it, the stronger you get in it, supposedly.
Right. There's also people that are, quote, too old to teach skill, because Shrewd was like looking for the old coterie members. Did they just not use the skill for a long time and want to get away from that life, and then theirs was not being able to be used? Or did Shrewd actually do something?
Does this mean that if Verity were to have lived, he wouldn't have been able to use a skill anymore after this period either? Like, maybe if you use a lot of skill in one setting, and like as much as Verity is using, and then stop, you can't really get back into it. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, we don't know.
Maybe he wasn't very strong to begin with. His brother isn't very strong, although that's more so from a lifetime of not using a muscle that, he could have been. But maybe it's just not a strong trait. I don't know.
Through August's eyes, we see Kettrikin telling the lie to the people that they promised that they would tell. That Rurik submitted to his wound on the ice fields, the arrow, and he has passed away. And she was pledging herself to the Six Duchies and hoped to please his memory, to fulfilling that task that he set out to accomplish, to unite those two peoples. And then Galen's claw of a hand settled on Verity's shoulder. I broke into his link with Verity, pushed him aside. Beware Galen, Verity. Beware a traitor come to drain you dry. Touch him not. And I think that springs Galen's plan a little bit sooner than he wanted to. Hearing that warning, he starts to drain him.
Right. But also, he broke into his link to talk to Verity. So what did he have with Verity before?
He broke into Galen's link with Verity.
Right.
I think you're able to have multiple links with people.
Okay. I don't know. I just thought it was interesting that, like...
And also, Fitz is closer to Verity than Galen would be. And I think Verity knows to hold Galen at a contained link and very tight, like, this is the only communication we're getting. I'm not letting you into my mind.
Right. So
and
there was just...
Fitz broke into Verity's actual mind, just looking through. So I think Fitz was able to oversee what was happening, and Galen didn't know Fitz was there yet. That's my thoughts on it.
I don't know. I guess I just thought it was like weird that he was breaking into a link to talk to Verity when he was already in his head. Like, why did he have to break into that link to say, hey, something's wrong?
Yeah, again, we don't know much about the skill, at all.
And we need like you know how the Harry Potter books have like the textbooks that they printed later, she printed later? We need that, but like about the skill. We need the skill scrolls published.
All right, Robin Hobb, get on it. We need a primer on exactly how the skill works.
I need to be able to practice it.
Yes. So Galen starts draining him.
It's like a vortex.
Yeah, it's like a vortex. Verity's skill is incredibly strong. He's the strongest user that Shrewd has seen in his lifetime. But he's been using his skill so much, so strongly all day to keep the red ships away from the shores that he has no well of strength left for himself.
Right.
And so the draining is going incredibly quickly, and Verity doesn't have any of those reserves, so he's getting drained dry very fast.
Well, he puts everything into his skill.
Yeah. So Fitz is trying to cling to Verity and is saying, like, my prince, Verity, he senses a brief rallying from him, but there's nothing that he can really do at the moment, and Verity starts to sag. And all the while, Galen's like, keeps his hand on his shoulder, are you all right, my prince? And that's when Fitz literally flings everything else that he has towards him. Reserves I had not suspected in myself. I opened up and let them go, just as Verity did when he skilled. I had not known I had so much to give. Take it all. I would die anyway. And you were always good to me when I was young.
Says the 15-year-old.
I heard the words clearly, as if I had spoken them, and felt the breaking of a mortal bond as strength flowed into Verity through me. He waxed suddenly, strong, beast strong, and angry.
So here we have strength he doesn't know he had, a breaking of a mortal bond, and beast strength. And this is why I think part of this is from Nosy.
Oh yeah, it's all coming together. Rest in peace, the good boy.
Good pup.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. And I think the first time I read this, when I didn't realize it was Nosy, I thought it was just the breaking of a mortal bond, basically Fitz willing himself to die, giving all of his strength away to Verity. But the Nosy thing makes way more sense.
I don't know. And also, I just made it up, so...
Well...
I could be completely wrong. I didn't write this book.
Yeah, but I think you're right, so in my head, that's fine.
Thank you, yeah. Well...
But Verity has the complete anime turnaround here, and is like...
Nani?
I shall be fine, to Galen as he takes off his hand. I but worried about you. You seem to tremble. Are you sure you are strong enough for this? You must not attempt a challenge that is beyond you. Think what might happen. He's like so threatening in his
well, he's standing up. And...
yeah, his threats like underlying his tone of voice. And as a gardener pulls a weed from the earth, Verity smiled and pulled from the traitor all that was in him. Galen fell, clutching his chest, an empty man-shaped thing now. Literally straight up murders him by sucking his soul out of his body and using his strength.
Like, dang, you know, he was just waiting for the opportunity. He was like, please, every night before bed, please, Etta and Elle, please give me an opportunity. Like, just anything that I can get away with. And he took it and he was happy. And I mean, he knows Galen's an awful person. So.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think he would think or knew that he would go that far.
Probably not, because he's a good person. And thinks
but also,
the best of people.
This is probably the best that Verity has felt in months and months since he drew strength from Fitz.
True.
He's been a walking shell of a man, basically, trying to use his skill, and now he has all of the strength from Galen and like all of the strength from Nosy/Fitz.
Right. Which also, does he permanently keep Galen's strength, or? It's just such a... We don't know enough about the skill, and I just don't understand, like...
I think the way that, like, what is it, like... Is it Will who's draining King Shrewd's skill later on? I think the way that he's doing that, or Will does it, like, actually permanently keeps it, but the way that Verity did it to Galen, I think he was just, like, draining him dry to...
Well, and I guess, I mean, you use up the skill, and the skill is somehow attached to your soul.
Right.
So, I guess technically you do get to keep it until you use it.
I could see the people that you drain to, like, all the way, you get to keep that skill, because Verity becomes, like... He makes a dragon all by himself, pretty much.
Right.
At the end. Like, he's super strong. The people that are still alive and like just lone strength, I don't think you get to keep that.
Right. But I don't know. It just begs the question of like, does that reserve then like, so I think of it as like a little heart in the corner of his player.
Sure.
Does he now have two hearts that get to refill, both of them refill?
Right.
Or is it just one heart, a temporary double heart, and then it'll go back down to one once he uses all of the first heart?
I think the second thing, the temporary health, the temporary skill would be Fitz loaning his strength and still being alive, and that skill being attached. But the way that Will does it to Shrewd, and I think he does it to some of his coterie later, I'm not sure.
I don't know.
He permanently gains that second skill container.
I don't know. It's just so weird. It doesn't make sense to me.
Again, we don't know enough.
Right.
But yeah, I think like I think I remember a plot where Will is trying to gain more power basically through draining people.
I guess
I think it's Will.
I don't know.
He's always the main antagonist later. So but yeah, so Galen has died. Verity has a little turnaround there. And then now that he is so powerful and strong with the skill and you know, just filled to the brim with strength that he hasn't had in a long time, he focuses through August.
Yep.
And now he says the paragraph, the warning that I mentioned at the beginning of this chapter. So keep in mind that the art of diplomacy is the luck of knowing more of your rival's secrets than he knows of yours. Always deal from a position of power. These were Shrewd's maxims, and Verity abided by them. So he is, in the sense of conveying information as a message to Regal, he is warning Regal not to follow in his half-brother's footsteps and just cut your garbage that you're doing. I'm warning you right now. Galen was too ambitious. He attempted that which was beyond his skill. A pity the queen's bastard could not be content with the position she gave him. A pity my younger brother could not dissuade his half-brother from his misplaced ambitions. Galen overstepped his position. My younger brother should take heed of what comes of such recklessness. It continues, but I want to talk about that first part.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's so layered in here of, like, subtle threats of, like, I know he was a bastard. I know he was your half-brother. Those are secrets that I have that you don't want out.
Uh-huh.
Position, like, knowing more secrets of your rival. And the position of power of, like, he overstepped his bounds. Too bad that his younger half-brother couldn't dissuade him from doing this.
So how do you think it'll look whenever it gets out that he tried to kill me and that he's your brother and that you had contact with him?
Yep. And also, at the same time, warning him that he overstepped his position.
He's using the words...
Don't do that.
He's using the words Galen used about Fitz.
Yeah, basically.
Just because Galen said he didn't want to train Fitz and that he should be content with what the position the king gave him already.
Yeah.
Shouldn't overstep his boundary. And Verity is telling Regal, weird.
And then with the straight up threat afterwards, Galen overstepped his position. My younger brother should take heed of what comes of such recklessness. That's a straight up threat.
Yeah.
That's not even like subtle there, but
I killed him.
Don't overstep your place, Regal.
Just saying. 2 is a nice, lovely, even number.
Yeah.
So.
And then he really pounds that into August's head that be sure to tell Regal privately. Not many knew Galen was the queen's bastard and his half-brother. I am sure he would not want scandal to soil his mother's name or his. Such family secrets should be well guarded.
Right.
So that gives August a position of power over Regal as well for this conversation.
Yep.
And really pounds in, again, the people have this secret over you, Regal. Don't screw up. Don't do anything.
Mm-hmm. Which... It's really interesting, the point of you wouldn't want to soil your mother's name. And it makes me feel like this must have been pent-up rage at, like, they were trying to soil his brother's name. And they were trying to look down on his brother and make it look so bad because nobody knows the secret and she's no better.
Yeah.
And wouldn't it be so bad if you have been sitting here talking all this crap about how horrible chivalry is and how if you have a baby out of wedlock, you're a trash person and how you don't mean anything? What would that look like if your mother was one of those people? Where's her standing then? And therefore, where's your standing? And like, it's just so deep and it's so good that he's drawing on things that have been said by Regal. Yeah. Like he's using Regal's words and logic against him and putting in his face that you don't make any sense. So
it's one of the best call outs of this series, honestly.
Seriously, he literally drops August the mic whenever he's done. Like
poor August though, man.
Poor August.
And then with a force that put August on his knees, Verity pushed through him to stand before Ketchikan in her mind. He's literally reaching through to August's mind and then extending beyond August to reach into Ketchikan's mind.
Mm-hmm.
Misuse of the skill through
maybe.
Oh, there you go, August.
I don't know.
You're welcome.
But he's trying to be gentle.
Yeah, I sensed his effort to be gentle, but this is for in Ketchikan's mind, not for August.
No.
August is just a tool for him.
He's literally the mic.
I await you, my queen in waiting, and by my name, I swear to you, I had naught to do with your brother's death. I knew nothing of it, and I grieve with you. I would not want you to come to me thinking his blood on my hands. Like a jewel opening was the light in Verity's heart as he exposed it to her, that she might know she had not been given to a murderer. Selflessly, he made himself vulnerable to her, giving trust to build trust. She swayed, but stood. August fainted. Then the contact was gone. Verity, to wrap this up, just cuffs Fitz back into his body because he's giving too much and he doesn't want Fitz to die.
Cuffed him like a bear, and he slammed back into his silent, sightless body.
Verity really, really opened himself up to Kettricken there, which is awesome. That's what she needed. Yeah. Honestly.
He was speaking her love language.
Yeah.
And he did it. And I don't know if she can understand how vulnerable he's being. Because in my mind, the way he's opening up to her is letting her into his mind.
Yeah.
Even if it's just a little sliver and maybe Fitz can't see what exactly is being exchanged. But that means opening yourself up like that means that there is a doorway to harm you.
Right.
Which Fitz knows better than anybody.
Usually with people who are well versed in the skill and know what they're doing. But yes, that's still a vulnerability to for anybody to bear themselves down to their open mind, what they actually think and what they're actually feeling. That's a vulnerability that anyone can attest to.
Right.
And he's doing it literally. Yeah. Mind to mind.
Like she could reach out and physically harm him if she wanted to. And I don't know. I really like that he's done this because he doesn't know her. I mean, we know that she's a good person and that she is someone
rash.
Yeah, a little. And that she deserves his love, but he doesn't know her. And maybe there was a little bit of information sharing on Fitz's part, but I mean, I don't know. It's just really brave of him. I really like it. He's not that bad. Yeah. Not that I ever thought he was to begin with, but
true. Well, that wraps up this chapter. A lot went on. We only have one chapter, which is basically another wrap up, and then an epilogue after that. And we're done with this book.
Yeah.
This is literally like the last big climax action scene.
Right. Weirdly enough, I would say that I think this chapter is a happy Fitz chapter. Hear me out.
Ooh.
Hear me out.
I'm listening, but skeptically.
He is ending this chapter knowing Burrich is alive, has a chance to continue living. He has saved Verity's life.
Yeah.
Galen's gone. And Kettricken trusts him. Yeah, or trusts Verity fair. Now. Verity was able to clear the air.
Doesn't know that Nosy is dead yet.
Exactly. So rough, definitely a beat up place, but I think we can at least end with there's some general happiness of like, I did it. Yeah. Even if I die, I saved something. And so I feel like maybe pride.
Yeah, I was going to say triumphant, but not happy. But I know with all those like things added up, yeah, I can chalk it up for that, I guess. Successful Fitz.
A weird chapter to say that I think that he's happy at the end of. But
yeah,
I stand by it.
Thank you so much for listening to us today, ramble on about random things. Mm-hmm. If you want to ramble with us, please reach out to our email, isfitzhappy@gmail.com, or hit us up on any of the social medias at isfitzhappy.
Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about the stuff you guys talked to us about. Okay, so first up, we got an email from a listener named Keith who was talking about last chapter, where I was a little hesitant to think that Kettricken was fully innocent I had said that I thought that maybe Regal had told Kettricken that he was going to be the king in waiting soon.
Yeah, just like implying like, hey, we can be married and whatever.
Yeah, so I had said that maybe that was a possibility in my mind. And they had a really interesting take that when Kettricken is talking about her fulfilling her duty to marry him, she's saying she's marrying the title, as in, if I say I'm marrying the man, that means it's a love thing. And I can never love the man who ordered a hit on my brother.
And also, I'm a sacrifice in this, basically. Like, it's my duty that I was literally raised to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So she can't marry Verity, the man, but she can marry the title that she was promised to.
Yep.
And I thought that was a very interesting distinction, and I really liked that explanation, and it helped me feel like she doesn't know. Regal really did keep it from her, and I'm okay with that change of thinking pace.
Yeah, I completely agree with Keith. I don't think that she ever knew anything. So
we also had I had a very lovely talk with Inna on Instagram. Inna brought up the possibility of wit, the skill of wit, being a potential metaphor for LGBTQ plus issues, or just in general being part of this rainbow umbrella, and how wit is something that is seen as dirty and not good and looked down upon, and you're different, you're not accepted if you have it. And there's this pushing down of the wit by Burrich of saying, I don't have it, and even if I do, I'm just going to fight against using it. Like, I'm not going to believe in this. And it's very reminiscent of a lot of queer people's struggles. I think, especially this book is written in the 90s. There wasn't as much acceptance as there is today.
Yeah.
And it's definitely an interesting thought of thinking of it like that, of where the person who has it is made to feel less than and different, and like they don't belong, and like it's not natural.
Specifically, they mentioned that the wit is widely considered to be dirty and animalistic and something that corrupts you.
Right.
Which, definitely was a feeling and still is a thought in some people in the world.
Yeah.
And it does draw amazing connections between the two, LGBTQ plus and the wit.
Right.
How it's persecuted, how people have to keep it repressed and hidden, and there's secret societies where those people can actually gather
and
freely
be themselves. Right. And nobody there looks down on them. And I don't know, I really like that connection there, and I agree, or I believed personally that is a very logical thing to think. And I know books are subjective to the readers, and that sometimes we read in our own experiences there, and maybe that's what this is. But I do think it's a really good take and something worth bringing up, that it does kind of make that feeling accessible for those of us who have felt that and felt like, oh, I'm not, like, I'm dirty in some way, but really it's just who you are.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Fitz fights with, of this isn't just because some people who have this do bad things doesn't mean that I have to be that way.
Right.
This is just something natural that I'm born with, and this is how I'm going to live. And I don't see the point of pretending
he feels
otherwise.
More connected, fully accepting that side of him. So
yeah. And I just really liked that imagery. And it was something that I had been thinking about prior that I just didn't quite know how to put into words. And so I was really excited to get the message, because it really clicked the points together for me that I was kind of grasping with.
They also, I do want to say, they also make a wider point about fantasy books in general.
Right.
How magic is often secretive, and it's often like this select class. It's sometimes frowned upon. Magic users are shunned or persecuted somehow. And it can be applied to a lot of fantasy books in general.
I think that also speaks to the magic of books again, that so many different kinds of people can come to a book and read in and have an experience that they're going through be brought to life in a fantastical way, in a sense of magical ability. And I just think that's really cool. Whether or not it was intentional on Robin Hobb's part, I think it's really cool that there is something like that we can attribute to our own lives, and something that is tangible. And it just kind of makes the story more real and broad in a really colorful way.
I love fantasy.
Yeah.
You can get lost in them, and it's escapism, but at the same time, there are so many parallels and so many characters that are working through issues that are comfortable for you to connect to and deal with in that space.
Right.
I don't know. Love it.
Yeah, I do too. And I really this book also touches a lot on mental health.
Yeah.
And brings that discussion forward, and maybe
it's a good parallel with The Wit as well.
Yeah.
Like literally anything that you're ashamed of, that people shun and put to the side and condemn.
I just love the fact that it can bring up conversations and maybe help readers realize something going on in their life that they didn't realize before, and help them read into things. And I love that about this series. I don't know. It's
so internally focused that I don't, at least the books that I've read, usually sweeping, broad, epic fantasy series focus on a lot of different characters, and they focus on overarching plot and things like that. And this is so character driven over so many books that you really get to see the development and the thoughts and the feelings that come from one person dealing with all of these issues in their own mind.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I love talking about it.
Yeah.
Love reading it.
It's just very interesting.
Yeah.
I like it a lot.
Thank you so much for reaching out.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sending messages. Thank you so much for liking Emma's memes. Occasionally I have some input, but it's mostly her brainchild over there.
You help.
Thank you so much for tuning in every week.
Yeah. One more and we're finished with this book, which is crazy.
Well, maybe 2 more episodes. We'll have to discuss if we want to do
special epilogue episode.
Yeah, epilogue, and discuss the whole book or something.
Ooh. A nice extra long, because these aren't long enough. So.
Well, don't promise an extra long one. We'll see. We'll see.
No, I'm sure nobody wants that. No, it's really fun doing this, and we really like having conversations with you guys, and especially when you guys bring up stuff that we maybe didn't think of or didn't know how to talk about. It's just really nice, and sometimes you change our minds. Or
bring up things that we have thought of and we have talked about, because we discuss the same things over and over, as you can probably tell. So we love it.
A lot of repeating. But yeah, we really like the community that we have going on. So thanks for being part of it. And we hope you guys stay as long as it feels like home.